Well, with rhymes like vomit, I spit them with disgust. The only reason I am rapping is because you all suck. I don't know why that is. I wish I didn't have to unleash the lame MCs, aka the drastic amateur. Ronin rhyme apocalypse upon the earth, with salamanders in the trees. ODB warned of these, so keep your eyes peeled and your weapons unsheathed. In this lame battlefield, with no room for perfection, there's no perfect realm, so deal the hand you're dealt. Blackjack across your dome, splits your head wide open, Joker's running wild, your medulla oblongata stolen, drops you dead, Fred, it's only temporary, but I was kidding, you're dead for life, Jack. And that's
all right, welcome, we are back, Meaningful Times with Friends, episode 28, just racking up the numbers, and as usual, Nathan of Newark, you guys and your fucking names, you know your names, so I'm tired of having to fight you on this. You guys gotta make me do this myself.
People of the Nathan Nation know what I'm talking about.
They
know where I'm from. Nathan, they know the real deal.
You have names, and you need to respect them. You know, and I'm sorry until we come.
That sigh was awesome.
What was the other one? It was Nathan Nation. You had another one's the Nathan. What was it?
I don't remember. Outside of Nathan Nation, I don't remember. Well, you had one that you made up. I don't remember.
Yeah, I did. I don't have time to think. Well, I'm going to call you Nathan Nation. All right.
Okay.
All right. So yes, we are back with the reluctant named Jason the Art Lord. We have updated Nathan's name to the Nathan Nation. He has his followers, and their voices were heard by the numbers being slow on the last episode when Nathan is missing, so is a portion of our audience. Spoolie D, adhering to the naming convention. Respect on that. So welcome, I mean Dave. We're back. Did we have apologies? I could have sworn we did.
I have one.
Yeah, what's that?
I don't have it written down this time. I apologize for that.
Oh, good.
Because apologies are about respect, right? You don't apologize unless you're trying to show some respect. So last episode, we went over the Greg Kihn Band song, Jeopardy. And afterwards, we were kind of talking, and it's like, well, a lot of us have, I don't know how the 6 degrees of separation works. If you know someone directly, is that 1 degree of separation, or is that 0 degrees of separation? Anyways, we're about 1 or whatever degrees of separation, all of us, from Greg Kihn. And so, I knew someone who knows him. Somebody actually reached out to Dave and said, hey, do you want to get on the show? Nathan's in the same industry. I'm sure Nathan probably knows like 20 people unknowingly that knows him. The consensus here was, we don't want to do that. We don't want to have him on. Shortly after that, he died. And I know correlation doesn't mean causation, but at the same time, I can't help thinking that this guy's star was just, oddly, it just kind of faded like year after year, ever so slowly into obscurity. And we had this chance to kind of give him one last bite at the apple. And you guys basically were Arthur's Herbe, like wall on him. And I do believe that he died of a broken heart. And I feel like I could have done more to persuade you to bring him on. And for that, I'm deeply sorry.
Well, as usual, your apologies are horseshit, because I told the guy, this was my exact answer. This is a shout out to Roman Guzman. He's the guy that got me this mug. I'd be using my Chibson USA tone mug, which Jason has over there. Pick those up at chibson.com. But I got my fresh mug from The Post, which this is from a show that I did in Modesto. It's at a place called The Post. And if you headline that show, he does the coolest thing. He makes you a mug of either like your headshot, or this was from one of the shows I did headlining The Post. I think my first show. We didn't disparage him. We were praising Greg Kihn. We were all about him. Thanks to Andy, our guest friend, filling in for Nate. And Roman Guzman, he messaged me saying, hey, actually, Greg, I know Greg Kihn. Said he's a really cool guy, really funny guy. If you want, I'll reach out to him if you'd like to have him, do what you guys were suggesting and review the video with him. And I only said, look, I respect Greg Kihn enough, and, and I know he's up there in years. I don't know if he wants to spend what remaining time he has talking with 4 strangers who are just, kind of some smart asses. Granted, we respect his work, but I'm not sure if he really wants to spend that time on a show that, God bless our audience, I love our audience, but we fluctuate between the 100 to 200 regular views, and we love that core audience. I just respect Greg Kinn's time to where it's like, I'm not sure if that's what he wants to do, but this is what I told Roman, if you think he would want to do that, feel free. Like, go ahead and reach out. So I didn't tell him no. I just said, use your best judgment. And then a day or two later, Greg Kinn died. He had Alzheimer's, by the way, too. I didn't know that. He would have
fit right in.
Yeah, probably would have made it interesting. I'm sure he would have been fun, just as fun with Alzheimer's. But respect to Greg Kinn, and our condolences go out to him and his families and all that kind of stuff, because he was very beloved. Weird Al gave him a shout out too. Like, that was really cool. And Greg Kinn's, he's a known entity more in the Bay Area, as we mentioned, because he was a DJ. Everybody that I knew that posted about him, I know a lot of music people that knew him, and they all had nothing but kind words to say. So yeah, rest in peace, Greg Kinn. Your life is no longer in jeopardy, and you broke up with life. So now you get to go be single in the sky, or whatever happens after death. All right. So moving along, we've had this topic on our agenda of potential topics. As usual, we kind of wait for a time when it feels a little more connected to whatever is going on with us at the time. And just in our chat this past week or so, it came up. Not just because it just recently happened. It was probably the strangest ones of these. I don't know if it's always been like this. It was a circus, and that is the Olympics. The Olympics happened this past summer, and we couldn't stop hearing about them, mostly because there was just so much weird shit that went into this year's Olympics. It was they happened in France, and the French not only kind of understand a little more of the history of the Olympics, they also have kind of a tongue-in-cheekness about them with their approach. They had an opening ceremony with a metal band that, if you know metal, there's a band called Gojira, which is Japanese, I believe, for Godzilla. Gojira. Might be Gojira. I don't know if they do the Spanish pronunciation of the J. It's Gojira. Is it Gojira? All right, it's Gojira. So, and they are kind of a techie metal band, a little more of the new wave, not new metal, but they're kind of, in that vein. They're not a bad band. I don't hate them. I'm not a fan necessarily. I've listened to them. They travel a lot with a band I do like, Mastodon. But they did this opening ceremony that was kind of cool. I saw some of it. This is the Marie Antoinette beheaded image that was part of it. She was in this castle thing or whatever that they were playing in. And they put on a really cool opening metal music show for the Olympics, which for metal, that's a big deal. And they also had this image that got in circulation because everybody that is stupid saw this and thought that they were lampooning or, mocking the Last Supper. On a layman's knowledge of religion, this don't look like the Last Supper to me. This looks like something different. And it was explained further. We'll go to the Art Lord for more on this. But let's go around and just thoughts on the Olympics.
I don't really think about the Olympics, to be frank. Watched it when I was a kid, because, what else are you going to do? It was all that was on the 4 or 5 channels. There was always just Olympics on 24 hours a day. Last time I remember actually paying any attention to the Olympics was when it was in Barcelona. And laughing every time they would say, "Welcome back to Club Barcelona." I don't really care for sports, so I don't really care about the Olympics. I guess the Olympics is like grasping at like relevance because, they just added skateboarding and then breakdancing this year. So I feel like the Olympics feels like maybe they need to like spice things up and get a little bit more hip. I'm not sure how well breakdancing went down this year, but who cares about the Olympics? I mean, I sure don't. I mean, the people who are competing sure do. Yeah, I guess. But I have nothing to say about the fucking Olympics. I'm sorry.
Do you have anything to say about that photo Dave put up? Like your thoughts on that?
The Feast of Dionysus. Yes.
That's what that was. Yeah.
What that was. It was a reference to a Renaissance painting about a Greek god because the Olympics originated in Greece. What do you know? And of course, the American Christian nationalist population, everything's always about them. So they only see everything through a lens of their Jesus figure. And so, yeah, it's a big, stupid misunderstanding. It's kind of embarrassing to be an American,
You think by any chance France kind of did it on purpose a little?
No.
To mess with America?
No.
No?
No.
It was just their thought artistically, what they were going with?
Yeah, just saying that it looks like the Last Supper, it's like it's a typical format composition for a painting of that era, of the Renaissance era. I mean, it's not like Da Vinci was there painting from the actual Last Supper, you know what I mean? Like, it's absurd. Just complete misunderstanding by all the idiots who got upset about it.
I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of tacky, but who cares? And also, like, if you think about them doing it on purpose, like Macron, the French president, is married to a pedophile. Maybe he's just tacky.
Do we know the French age of consent?
The French age of consent, I think, is like 5 years old.
Wait,
But,
is he married to a woman?
Yeah, well, yes, unless you believe like stupid conspiracy theories that think she's actually a man.
Totally hot if that's the case. Like, what are you talking about, pedophile? Older chick, dude. What are you talking about?
Any
man?
chance
so
to
hot.
go to pedophiles, Spoolie will go.
It's just a fucking fact. It's not. I'm not criticizing it. And also, I'm on Meaningful Times at Friends record saying that older, like adult women and kids.
Oh snap! That's a huge bitch.
Nate, your thoughts on the Olympics in general here?
I've never been an Olympic watcher, really. I didn't watch them at all this year. I didn't see the opening ceremonies. I think most of what I experienced was when I was a couple weeks ago in LA at the wife's cousin's house. Her cousin's fiance was throwing on segments on YouTube. Like, I saw one event, and it was apparently now an event in the Olympics where dudes jump real high on a trampoline and do like flips and stuff. And, dudes hold up cards at the end, 8.5, and judge based on the little acrobatics you do on that. But the Olympics combine two things that I'm not really a fan of. Number one, sports, and number two, nationalism. I don't feel pride in the fact that someone from my country can run faster than people from other countries, or throw a javelin farther than people from other countries, or pole vault better than people from other countries. It doesn't get my juices flowing. I don't get a little tear in my eye. America's so great. And I've talked about it endlessly that I'm just not really all that into sports. And I in a lot of ways, this year, it feels like the Olympics have been redefined because I don't know if breakdancing is a sport. So I have questions that go beyond just like my dislike of sports, like which things can be considered sport. Yeah. So no, I don't watch. I never really have. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
I got my breakdancing monkey. Yeah. So as someone who actually follows sports, I know Dave used to watch hockey, and we both watch Sports Entertainment, which is WWEF and all the minor league stuff. Dave and I both enjoy both those. But I went through a phase probably from age, 12 through 40 something, where I watched a lot of sports. And at the peak, sometime in my teens, I was watching baseball, football, basketball, women's tennis, men's tennis, hockey. So I'm pretty well indoctrinated into the whole sports world. And I've always hated the Olympics, because it's a bunch of sports that nobody would actually pay to watch unless you're being completely inundated and propagandized with this bizarre, like, nationalism that nobody feels except for 4 times a year. And let's be honest, nobody really gives a shit about the Winter Olympics. So it's really every 4 years. To watch things like team handball, equestrian, like, does anyone ever watch horse jumping? Like, it's not even like super like cool, like jumping off a cliff or jumping ravines, like some Evel Knievel shit. It's like these like 4 foot high things, and it's just like this unwatchable shit. I was watching archery, which was pretty interesting, except they showed the person's face, they showed them releasing the arrow, and then they just showed the target. You didn't even get to watch the arrow fly through the air to hit the target. They showed like skeet shooting, which I've seen Jason actually pulling clay pigeons in the 110-degree heat, and I think it was like Mariposa or something. It was in Chowchilla. So it's just a bunch of crap. You have like 4 different NBC. You have Peacock, you have NBC proper, you have USA Network. I think there's one other one that they were playing. And it's just like cycling, because I was actually traveling this whole time. So I was in the hotels, hotel bars, hotel rooms, and it was just going and going and going. And the thing is, like, these people don't get paid. They're completely exploited for this. And they completely destroy a community while they're there. Another fun fact, If you remember in the beginning, they tried to go all plant-based diet for all the Olympics because of climate change and all that stuff. And people started leaving because these people eat high protein diets because they're athletes. So I don't even know what the fucking point is of the Olympics. If it just went away, I don't think anyone would care except for the athletes. They don't get much out of it unless you're like a Simone Biles or a Michael Phelps, where you're kind of like a generational talent, where you're getting, endorsements. I think the average income for an Olympic athlete is $15,000 a year. And on average, they pay about $9,000 a year for healthcare. And that was another story that came out recently, is like they have awesome healthcare pretty much everywhere except for the United States. So all it does is pretty much, to, I think it was Jason's point, kind of expose what a fucked up country we are. And then everyone gets, like, they show these medal counts. Like, do you guys really care? And do people really care, or they just think they care? The point is, I've never, even as a sports fan, I never fucking enjoyed it. It's unwatchable crap. Most of the sports are esoteric. Nobody looks at them outside of the Olympics, other than like men's gymnastics, which is just more like the world's strongest man competition. Nothing's even interesting because I've never met a male gymnast, like, ever. I know a lot of female gymnasts. I've never fucking met, like, where do they make male gymnasts? Where do they come from?
You've always been a basketball guy. You don't even like Olympic hoops?
No.
Not even when the Dream Team was put together, when they first started letting professional athletes compete in the Olympics. Remember the Dream Team?
Oh, I do. I remember a very, very fucking long acid trip with one of our good friends, Doug, and he spent the entire second half of the acid trip in the morning after complaining about the Dream Team. Like, he was just stuck in this like weird post LSD loop about how fucked up it was to let professional athletes play in the Olympics. And like, I knew Doug at that point for a good like 8 years. He had never mentioned basketball, the Olympics, or anything up until that point. But for him, LSD unlocked two things: 4 hours of straight Lego building and four subsequent hours of the Dream Team. So when I think of the Dream Team, that's all I fucking think about, is that morning of him tripping and complaining about the Dream Team. But no, just watch professional basketball.
Fair enough. All right.
My memories of the Olympics are not nearly as surly and cynical as all three of you. I just remember they would come around every election year. First kind of memory I have, more so than an actual Olympic, was the Nadia Comaneci movie. There was a movie called Nadia that they played a lot on KBHK 44, where you got to learn her story of, what was the guy's name? Bella
Caroli.
Bella Caroli, her coach. And she was this young girl with a real knack for all of it. I think she got like one of the first perfect tens or some shit. But she was a young girl, teenage girl, competed and against all the odds and blah, blah, blah. I just remember it was a compelling movie. And then not long after that, it was all the gymnasts. That was kind of my first memories of these, because that was when Mary Lou Retton, she got a perfect 10 in some gymnast routine. So she was on all the shit. I developed an attraction to the female gymnasts. It's my, for whatever reason, I'm a lazy dude like crazy, but I've always found an attraction to healthy, fit women that, the muscle mommies, as they like to call them in wrestling. Then later, it happened when we were alive, but it was before my conscious brain really was aware of it. But there was the story of Miracle, the United States hockey team. They were like the Avengers Endgame, where there was like millions of different outcomes, and they would have lost all of them except for one. There was one specific instance that Doctor Strange found where they would defeat Thanos. And that's the story of Miracle, where the American hockey team that was a bunch of underdogs, and the team that was going to take it all, that took it all the time, was the USSR. Their hockey team was just dominant. They had good hockey teams in Canada. But if you see the movie Miracle with Kurt Russell, that tells the whole story of where the famous saying came, "Do you believe in miracles?" As if like, a hockey team winning really is a miracle.
It was like hockey Rocky IV.
It totally was. It was significant at the time. And yeah, they ended up beating the USSR in the finals and won the gold, which was, a pretty big deal. I mean, the fact that they even beat Canada too.
I would say though that "Do you believe in miracles?" the Al Michaels call is probably the third best call in history. Second being Joe Buck's "What a Disgusting Act" when Randy Moss rubbed his ass on the upright after scoring a touchdown in Green Bay. And the first one, of course, is the Hindenburg, right? Oh, the humanity! Best call of all time.
Didn't know that's where that came from. Yeah, so those were the earliest memories. And then later, we got wind of the Olympics, the Dream Team, as I mentioned. The events that were always part of it were always I knew track and field was involved, and then they had the conventional sports, boxing, wrestling. Those were events and whatnot that you could check out. And I think as time wore on, again, the whole relevancy factor in just trying to engage more younger viewership, they've always had a history of bringing on different events, but now we have, newer sports or newer events. I'm not sure if shooting guns was always a sport in the Olympic. I don't remember. I know archery was, but I didn't know.
Haven't they for years had that event in the Winter Olympics where they're like skiing and they have a long gun and they shoot some targets while skiing? I feel like guns...
It's called the biathlon.
Is that what it is? Okay, because
Yeah.
I feel like guns in one form or another have been in the Olympics for
It
quite some
probably have,
time.
but
Yeah.
this is the first year that we saw this guy. Things went viral because we live in an age now of everything being, social media, shared and all that shit. And so one of the things that went viral was this guy from Turkey who just looks like a psycho hitman, and apparently he barely trains, and he got like second or third place or whatever. They got this chick straight out of the Matrix or whatever.
Yeah, she looks like she's got some sort of like weird, like Eye Exam 2000 steampunk jeweler's loop thing going.
She was really into Johnny Mnemonic back in the day or something.
Yeah, that movie. Yeah, before there was John Wick, there was Johnny Mnemonic.
Before that, there was Sandra Bullock in The Net.
Yeah, that's it.
God.
But yeah, guns were part of it, and we're seeing more of these sports that were getting highlighted this year. Well, one of the more traditional sports that did it from the Olympics, a classic, is the pole vault, and it was hilariously front and center. I always remember in the Wide World of Sports and their opening, you would always see it would be the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. You'd always see that guy slamming into all kinds of shit. I hope that dude made some money from it. But then this guy got a lot of press. This is the French pole vaulter whose his other pole, his flesh pole, kept him out of contention. He made it, except for his dick. And his package right there knocked whatever, the shit that he has to pole vault over. One of the most hilarious cases of irony in an Olympic sport. But
You know what? If you want to make this shit more interesting, make cock vaulting a regular fucking sport.
cock vaulting. Okay. Yeah.
That's where you try to knock the bar down with your dick.
Your dick? Yeah. It's a little more specific.
Even though you guys are joking, that's way more entertaining than any of this garbage.
100%.
I think we're treating it seriously. We're not, we're joking, but not really. We're taking
Just
this.
breaking the fourth wall a little bit, Dave.
Going back to the gun thing, I mean, if you want to get Americans to pay attention to the Olympics, bravo for whoever was like, let's put more gun shit in the Olympics, because that'll get people watching in this country for sure.
Especially when they're foreigners, really play into that xenophobia factor of America.
Yeah, oh no.
The Olympics, more or less, kind of got a lot more notice this year from a lot of these oddities. And then coming back to what you were talking about with what they get paid, a lot of them have sponsorships in order to train. Because one of the most famous facilities for the Olympics was that Team Foxcatcher guy. They made a movie about him because he ended up murdering one of his wrestlers. He was a rich dude who specifically had a facility for wrestlers to train to go on to the Olympics. And they have these different sponsors, these different people that are philanthropists that throw money to get these players so they can be able to train and, feed themselves and all that. And all in the hopes of, yes, winning a gold medal. It's basically the world's NCAA is what I kind of see it as, because somebody's making money at this shit. They wouldn't do this if there wasn't money involved. With this grand stage, it's definitely a pyramid scheme, and they've uncovered a lot of that kind of shit whenever a different area is lobbying for an Olympic event in their place. The shady politics, the money changing hands that goes into it because they have to build it. They hire disparaged workers to do a lot of the shit. They displace people, like, they all turn into Gavin Newsom with the homeless. They're like, all right, you got to get the fuck out of here because we got the Olympics coming through and they're important, that kind of thing. And I also want to let me give a little props to Spoolie D once again, man, the 2-time recipient winner of props from me, because it's documented in our show. I don't defend pedophiles.
Oh, snap! That's a huge bitch!
Spoolie D completely missed a grave opportunity women's gymnastics and a lot of the hockey teams in Canada, there's been a lot of uncovered wrongdoing with youngsters. Maybe you just don't know. You didn't know.
Well, no, I mean, it's not to look a gift props in the mouth. It was less gratuitous and more contextual, right? Because they're trying to figure out like the artistic choices of the opening ceremony. And I thought, since the president of France made an interesting choice in his selection of life partners, maybe there was some correlation or some sort of through line. I may be wrong, but it wasn't. I wasn't looking for that. I'm not the guy who fucking elected this dude and his, to use a colloquialism, old lady, multiple times. So, anyways, just bringing the facts, my man.
Wait. There was also a convicted child rapist competing in the games. You don't remember? You didn't hear about that? I don't remember what country it was from or what sport because I don't. I don't give a shit about any of this shit. But yeah, there was a convicted child rapist who competed and was allowed to compete. And there was a lot of criticism of it, of course. He got booed, and then he complained that he got booed and said it was going too far to boo him.
Here you go. Dutch beach volleyball player Steven van de Velde, who was convicted of raping a 12-year-old British girl in 2016. So there you go. He played beach volleyball.
Accused, but not convicted, right?
No, convicted.
Oh, okay.
He was supposed to be like in prison for like 12 years or something, and they let him out after like 8 months.
Beach volleyball seems kind of rapey, if you ask me. I don't know.
All I gotta say is, I gotta take that props back. You're slacking, Spoolie D, because right there was a convicted pedophile.
You were giving me props for not bringing up pedophilia gratuitously.
No, not bring it up where it would seem more, where it seemed like I was expecting you to, and now slacking. All your energies is focused in the wrong areas. So.
What's fascinating about this plot twist is that it has nothing to do with me. It
has everything to do with you.
Your own assumption incorrect, and then you're lashing out at me, which is the most fingers thing ever. So props to you, Dave.
No props. I'm not taking your props. There's that wall, and we need you on that wall. But I also threw this image up here, probably at the most inappropriate time when we're talking about it. Convicted pedophile in the Olympics. This is not her. All right, this is not any convicted pedophile. This lady kind of takes us into our next topic a little bit because she ended up becoming the last of the famous Olympians this year. This is Australia's breakdancing contestant that went viral because if you watched her if you see this right here, I mean, this one, on this side right here, almost looks like she's breakdancing. That looks like kind of a pose that you might see in a breakdance. This right here, don't know what the fuck that is. And she did a routine that if anybody who watched it knows was like, yeah, that ain't breakdancing, lady. Like she did some weird.
It's kind of a praying mantis kung fu looking thing. I don't know.
She's become the new Hawk Tua with a lot of memes. They've been putting her creeping along in a lot of, like, I think one of my favorite ones was me when I smell a pie on a windowsill trying to get the pie or some shit, She ended up going viral because this routine that she did was not only completely ridiculous and kind of made a farce out of the breakdancing category, it then kind of, brought on the question because a lot of people were saying like, hey, is breakdancing even a sport? Like, that's more of that's a dance and yada, yada. And that led to another topic. And this is a great, what happened to me? We had a great topic on the back burner there. And it was, hey, what even is a sport? Like what constitutes a sport these days? Because we've discussed it in the chat, everything from like NASCAR, golf. I believe Spoolie D and I were both big fans of the show Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel.
Hell yeah.
Which, rest in peace. There's no more. I mean, nobody died yet, or there have been dead people, but nobody died, resulting in the end of that show. It ended, it wrapped up, and I was really bummed. I don't enjoy sports on their own merits, but I love me some propagandized drama that would be spun up by Real Sports. And I say propagandized just because that's kind of what all media is. But it would sell me on the thought of sports more so than any sport on its own. And because it would give you a lot of the behind the scenes drama of it and also uncovered a lot of interesting, scandals and whatnot.
Did you see the one where it was like this inner city like drug dealer? He went to jail and he came out and became a falconer. That was a good one.
I think I saw that one. But their definition of sports was fairly loose because they would cover things from chess competitions that would go on. I remember they had a big story on the popularity of video gaming becoming a huge event and moneymaker, but also the primary contestants all being very young children. Junior high.
Dave goes with pedophilia again.
Oh, snap. That's a huge bitch.
And you with your balls. What the fuck is with all the animal balls, dude? Like, you know? Yeah. Anyway, so their whole story was like, you know, is this healthy for children and yada yada. But what constitutes a sport? And that's one of the things that we kind of discussed in the chat. Even though a quarter of us are definitely interested in some sports, another quarter has a mild interest more in just the exploitation aspects of sports than the other two could really give a fuck about sports. But we love having opinions on shit that we don't give a fuck about. So I brought up this definition that I just found just in a Google search. A sport is an activity that requires physical actions and skills where individuals or teams compete under a set of rules. So I'm guessing that the physical actions and skills can be very loose, kind of like the definition of music, of controlled sound and silence over time. So let's start with the guy who probably just hates this whole episode, just from start to finish. Jason, Art Lord, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. You shouldn't start with me. Let me.
I am.
Breakdancing's a sport, sure. I mean, if gymnastics floor routines can be a sport, then breakdancing it can be a sport. That's fine. Whatever.
I like that logic, Jay. So
bowling's a sport, sure. Let's have Olympic bowling.
Is there Olympic? I think there's Olympic bowling.
Isn't there like lawn bowling or some shit? I don't know. Who cares?
People care, Jay. You've had some lines in the chat about it. Sorry, I got to milk these thoughts from you like a cow.
I'm sorry, I'm the wrong guy.
Is there anything that you would say is absolutely not a sport, in your opinion?
Writing a novel is not a sport.
All right, let's see.
I mean, under certain circumstances, I guess you could make it a sport. But yes,
what if you're running while you're writing it, like, you know, or skiing downhill while writing the great novel, or a poem even? What if you're shooting a gun while writing a haiku? You know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Have you heard of Matt Christopher?
No.
So he's a children's author, and he writes only sports themed books. And they're all about like every possible sport. He's written like 30 or 40 books. The only reason I bring this up, one, because of what you said, but two, this guy that none of you have ever heard of, he has his own campaign on his website to try and get himself put on a U.S. postage stamp because he's that self-important.
Nate?
When I was thinking about this, it's easiest for me to relate to it by things like that are within my own experience. So, for instance, I'm really into fishing. I have been for years. My family owned a cabin up in the Sierra since my entire life. So I spent every summer up there fishing in the lake. And depending on who you talk to, I guess sport fishing could be considered a sport. You buy fishing stuff at a sporting goods store. You know, I've done deep sea fishing. I've done lake fishing, off boats, you know, a little bit of everything. And from my own experience, I don't think I would consider fishing a sport. For most of my life, I would go fishing a lot, but I'd be super high while I was doing it. Drink like 8 beers. Is that an activity that you could consider a sport? I mean, like if you catch a huge enough fish, sure, it's a physical challenge to catch a giant fish, but that's few and far between in terms of my own personal experience of fishing. So, like, you know, I'm no athlete. I've never participated in sports other than maybe skateboarding. So fishing is really the only thing I can relate to in terms of something that gets called a sport, but I personally don't think it is at all. Outside of that, like breakdancing, I mean, it's a physical activity. It requires exertion in ways that I couldn't possibly do. But like, is it a sport? I don't know. I guess I typically think of something that is a team activity to be more of a sport, which is why I think I dislike NASCAR quite a bit, because it's a competition, sure, but it's, you know, you putting your foot down on a gas pedal and driving a vehicle 200 miles an hour or whatever. I don't know if I think of that as a sport. I don't know.
Can I ask you a question about fishing?
Sure.
Where does fishing cross the line into being a hate crime?
Oh, snap. That's a huge bitch.
How so?
Well, okay, if you're fishing to eat the fish, that makes sense. But
Okay.
otherwise, you're literally just fucking up an animal's mouth and like dragging it out of its like natural habitat, throwing it, watching it flop around, and then throwing it back and going, "Look what I did! I fucked up this lower species."
Well, I'll tell you what, as I've gotten older, I've gotten less comfortable with it. Like, I still like to go fishing, but for me, it's more about the experience of just like a Zen thing. I'm out there by the ocean or whatever, just relaxing. If I catch something or not, it doesn't really fucking matter. There have been times where I have genuinely felt bad. You have a fish on the line and the line breaks, and you know there's a fish that's out there with its hook in its mouth swimming around. That shit makes me feel bad. But in general, you know, I haven't thought about it too much. It doesn't
And
bother
we're
me
like,
that
we
much.
grew up in the 90s, so people were doing that to their own mouths anyways.
Fair enough.
You brought up something that, based on a lot of the loose definitions, I would say bong rips could be a sport, requires a physical action and somewhat of a skill. And based on the, if you remember seeing the giant bongs that we saw growing up, some of those bong hits, especially if you took it in from both inhaling the burning of the bowl and like not taking that, exhale and then breathing in the giant bong full of smoke. If you could do it in one hit, that would be pretty impressive. So
Without gagging.
Well, you're gonna cough. You're gonna cough, but if you could do it and not, like you have to finish it.
Ben made this gravity bong, like where you cut the 2-liter bottle in half and you make like a foil bowl and then you slam it into like a tank of water. I was coughing out smoke. I was exhaling smoke for like the next 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I would challenge any fucking Olympic athlete to be able to handle that shit.
Well, they no doubt have done it. Spoolie, your thoughts. What is a sport?
I want to get away from the semantic argument. There's like 3 categories. There's like a sport like swimming where you're racing, right? Like it's objective. There's a start point and end point and there's a fucking time. Or there's like basketball where you're scoring points, or even fucking water polo or handball, or much to Nathan's chagrin, beach volleyball. There's an actual like keeping score and scoring points and stuff. And then there's things like diving and gymnastics, and where you can do all this crazy shit, but it's just some bunch of fools like judging you, like writing shit down. And it's like, ooh, okay, well, that was good. And the proof that it is not objective and it's just some fucking pageant is that the judges often almost always have different scores. So what the fuck even is that? That's not a fucking sport, or it's not even a fucking game. Like gin rummy is more objective than fucking diving or gymnastics or any of that shit. Synchronized swimming. Like it's all just a bunch of people sitting there like with their own esoteric criteria, like judging that. And then there's the third category, which is what Nathan brought up, which is like horseback riding. You're not even an athlete. You're riding a fucking horse and then you have fools judging you. Or shooting or NASCAR, where it's objective. For things like NASCAR, where it is objective, and it is strenuous. You do have to turn left a lot, like hundreds of times. You do have to like, keep control of the car and not die. So that is kind of impressive. Like, shooting or anything like that, where you have like you're operating a machine. I don't know if that's a sport. It's an impressive competition. It's an exertion. But if you go by like the definition that's sitting behind Dave's, as opposed to the definition that's sitting behind me, all of this shit is sports. But to me, if you don't have objective criteria, like you're now sub fucking Monopoly, like in terms of like a real competition. It's all just fucking subjective bullshit. And I think that's where I would say that something like diving is more akin to writing a novel than it is to something like baseball or football.
Thoughtful answer. NASCAR is an easy target to kind of like, say like, is it really a sport or whatnot? But that's like the devolved version of Formula One, which my parents, big fans of the show, were always fans when I was growing up of Formula One. So I got kind of, some exposure to that. And that's a little more interesting because the tracks are long and they go in 2 different directions, with the left and the right when you got to turn. There's a history of all that stuff with competition. We kind of get into this, everybody gets a medal territory of what is a sport. I think that's what real sports would kind of just look at. It's like it included sports, but also it encompassed all aspects of competition in order to, kind of have something to talk about. And you can turn anything into a competition. That's practically the American way. We have fucking child beauty pageants.
Oh, snap. That's a huge bitch.
Yeah, there we go. But the fact that like people can kind of like apply competition to so many things that are a little more subjective. If you need judges, then obviously you're going into kind of a forced aspect of competition onto something that clearly is more subjective, but it is competitive because people are competitive in those regards. Skateboarding is probably one of the sports that, you know, we grew up in the age of skateboarding becoming a popular phenomenon, you know, because it had its on again, off again popularities ever since it was a product craze, as we've discussed before. And then the Dogtown and Z Boys really revolutionized just the nature of skateboarding with their style in competitions that were very hokey when they first started. And then when they came along, no one knew what to make of them because everything they were doing, they were confused because it was different. And all they were doing was mimicking surfing. They were all surfers that then applied that logic to the skateboard. And they made it look cool. But then it started incorporating a lot of these tricks that are just incredible. Like the stuff they're doing today was stuff that I would imagine as an impossibility when I was a kid. You know, they have an ollie called an ollie impossible. And when you look at it, I'm like, how the fuck do they do that? I've seen grown fathers who used to skate be able to pull off still and all, like, still got it. As far as other sports, the competition, like with video games and chess, they're definitely competitions. No argument there. I mean, if that's a sport, then like Texas Hold'em is a sport.
Texas Hold'em is more of a sport than figure skating.
I don't agree with that, only because it's the physical actions part. There's athleticism. I agree with Jason's logic that if we're going to consider the gymnastics routines and some of these other things that they're doing that involves, you know, great physical exertion, yeah, breakdancing is up there. It comes from the streets, from urban youth and all that, but we grew up watching it, and anybody who's tried to do those moves knows they ain't easy. It's very physical.
I'm always fascinated every time the Winter Olympics rolls around, curling somehow gets all this fucking attention. Every time a bunch of assholes with brooms on the ice pushing a little stone around. I mean, that took some creativity to invent, I'm sure, and a lot of boredom.
Nobody likes curling because curling's awesome. It's just because they were trying to be ironic.
Jason's got to say something. I feel like
genuinely a big deal.
Say something. Say something.
Genuinely a big. Shut up. It's genuinely a big deal in Canada, curling. Like, people actually do like hang out and watch curling when it's not Olympics time. You know what I mean?
I have a question to bring Jason back into this, being our art lord. Do you feel that there is art in sports?
I guess so. Sure.
Care to elaborate? Yeah. More words than that?
Well, there's certainly physical expression involved, right?
I'm asking you. So
I don't fucking know. I've never really thought about it because who gives a shit?
I'm asking
What
you.
about rhythmic gymnastics?
What about it?
That's all it is. It's just like it's dance.
Yeah, there you go.
Same thing with figure skating. It's dance. It's art.
No, I don't know. Figure skating, there's an extra degree of difficulty because you're doing it on little blades, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's art and it's hard.
I feel like we have to interrogate you to get
Well, because I'm sorry, but sports is not a topic that I really genuinely
understood. But you have
then I don't give a fuck about sports.
Still, you got a big fucking brain, and we are trying to pick it to get to the bottom of whether there's an artistry to sports.
Sure, why not?
Sure, why not is not a real.
Let's move on. Let's move on.
No, we're not moving on. We're sticking right here. We got some good elaboration there, but I think you're fighting us a little too much here. Come on.
What was it like when you played organized football?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was embarrassing and weird. I didn't like it. I was doing it because I felt like I was supposed to. I didn't understand why everybody else cared so much about doing it. You know what I mean? I couldn't relate to anybody at all in that regard. So, guys who would start crying if we were losing. I'm like, who cares? What's the difference? You know what I mean? I don't know. I just didn't give a shit.
Not a competitive guy is really what you're.
I'm very competitive. I just don't care about sports to the point.
But what are you competitive about then?
I'm competitive about not being wrong.
Oh, look at that.
I don't like being wrong. Don't let me be wrong.
Lord.
So we can have the pedantic Olympics, and
yeah,
you'd compete hard. I'm game. I'm game for that.
What about bodybuilding? Do you consider that a sport?
It's kind of also artsy.
Yeah.
Because it's really about the aesthetic.
Yeah.
S curves and all that.
Sure.
So you're just trying to get us off your back, man. I don't really-
Clearly, when you said "leave me the fuck alone," let's end this. I think that was the fucking first indication they wanted to stop talking about
No,
this.
I want articulate thought from our art lord. You know?
This has now become meaningful harassment with friends.
Fucking A. That's what happens with friends sometimes. You know, try to get to the heart of the matter, and you know, you knew what the score was with this topic. You know, you've done some research before. You know, it's not asking a whole lot. But all right, well, we gotta sure, why not? Sorry for the interrogation, Jason. I was just trying to involve you, you know, trying to be a friend, you know. But yeah, thank you for everybody else's participation. So,
Can I go hit the head real quick before we move on?
yeah, go hit your head. Man.
Yeah, all right.
A lot of peeing. That should be a sport right there. You know, competitive urination. All right. Well, moving on. Our next topic is our song category this week was selected by the Nathan Nation, and Nate had the task of picking this week's song, and he was either going to go old or something new. And when we were kind of pressing further on his selection, one of the things that kind of unearthed was that Nathan is kind of a closet mumble rap fan, because he knew a whole lot more about it than any of us did. And it started with our song that he selected. This is Bad and Boujee by Migos, featuring, who's the guy? Little something?
Little Uzi Vert. I'll give you some background with me in this song, and then I'll go into why I chose it. So probably about a year after the song came out, it was like 2018 or something like that, my wife and I were in Chicago doing some shopping, and we go into a store, and this song came on while we were there. And both my wife and I have very similar music tastes. We're not big hip hop people. A little bit, but not a lot. And we had never heard the song. And it was so different, like, than most of rap that I had heard up to that point, because I don't think at that point mumble rap had really taken over yet. So we started walking around Chicago making fun of it. And one of us would just be walking down the street and go, and just like start imitating the weird bullshit sounds they make in this fucking song. And like, we went back to the hotel room that night, and my wife was like, "What is that fucking song?" And she found it, and then we started actually listening to it, and it went from being a joke to something that we were kind of like, let's play Bad and Boujee and actually listen to it, because we're kind of digging it now. It was a weird turn. But like, there's these weird things with me and pop culture. Like, you make fun of me in our chat all the time because I'm generally tuned out. Like, there's certain things that just sneak up on me. Like, when I've gone to people's houses over the past decades and someone is like, "Come sit down and play a video game with me," and they hand me a video game controller. The fuck are all these buttons on this control? I don't know how this works. I've been so not playing video games for so long. Why are there buttons on the top of the controller? There should be a move thing and A and B. What the fuck? Or if you're not into Marvel movies, right? Like, try watching a post-credit sequence in a Marvel movie if you've watched none of them, and try to make any fucking sense of that shit. Doesn't matter whoever Captain Who is that they're bringing back next movie. Like, and so for me, hearing this mumble rap shit was an experience like that, because I was used to hip hop that told a story, that had discernible lyrics that, you know, like, let's talk about the songs we've done. We did Goodbye Rap by Cool Keith, where he's saying rap sucks now and he's goodbye to it. It's whack. We did Funky Cold Medina, where it's like Love Potion number 9 of hip hop. We did Moo by Doja Cat, which is just a silly song. But again, you can understand what she's saying clearly. It's just a bunch of crap. And we did the MAGA rappers talking about Target. Fuck them, but at least you still understood what the fuck they were talking about.
You picked a kind of an origin of hip hop song too, with "Don't Block Me in the Dance Floor" or some shit, or what is it?
It was more like electro funk kind of, but yeah.
What was that song though?
Yeah.
Parking on the Dance Floor. Okay.
So this seems to be the start, or at least from what it brought to my attention, like, of this type of hip hop where I've listened to this song many, many times, and for the life of me, I cannot pick up on what the fuck is being talked about. Like, other than the weird sounds, like I made Nathan notes. So weird shit like cricket or what, yeah, Shkee! And yeah. That's the shit I pick up on in this. Outside of that, whatever they're talking about is completely nonsensical to me. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because this song's 8 years old now, but even now, this seems to have been like a beginning of a trend in rap becoming less and less coherent. So that's my whole spiel on this nonsense.
Also continuing a trend of what will be in the trailer.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm glad you selected this, Spoolie D.
I'm really obsessed now with what kind of drugs you're going to cook up in a crock pot. Because I have
With
a
an
crock
Uzi.
pot. And well, Uzi's a guy, I think.
That's an entendre, an actual Uzi, and with Lil Uzi Vert.
I've listened to this actually when I was late. I was coming back from Charlotte and I would listen to it twice on my way back in the car. One of the things I noticed is like mumble rap, because they kind of just the cascades on itself. I think the origins can be taken back to MC Hammer's. I think he just went to Hammer at that point. Adam's Family Groove. If you think about like that kind of like rat-a-tat cadence, that's the first time I actually heard that was the Adams Family. I'm sure these guys would be super flattered by that comparison. The other thing, and no shock about this, is there is no reason. Like I've listened to this thing, I've read the lyrics, like I went deep on this thing. There's no fucking reason this needs to be 5 minutes and 43 seconds. Like there is no variation. This could be a solid 3 minutes. There's a slight variation. And then the whole mumble rap thing, when I was sitting there listening to it, just me in the car, I could understand what they were saying. I don't know even if that's even a criticism that you guys have of it, but it's more just a lack of variation. And if you're going to do lack of variation, it should be brief. But in terms of being able to understand it, you can understand it if you're listening. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do like more so actually like Nathan's cover of a portion of it. That was probably the highlight for me of it. I do have a crock pot and I will be doing a lot of research on my own, much to your chagrin.
All right, Jason.
When I think of mumble rap, I think of people like not actually saying words even, or doing what sounds like not even saying words. Like there was a lot of enunciation in this song.
Yeah.
So like maybe this is like early mumble rap before it got really mumbly or something. But I sent you guys a link to something by a weird gremlin called Spot'em Got'em. And now that to me is like real mumble rap, you know what I mean? Like it was like really like he couldn't even like finish a word kind of a sound, you know? This wasn't so mumbly. I was kind of disappointed that like the lack of mumbling involved. I mean, most of it was intelligible. It was speaking a language I don't understand, but it was intelligible. Like I understood the words. I don't know what they meant, you know, that kind of a thing. But, you know, whatever. It's fine. It was actually not a bad tune. Like I really like the move in rap like this to where it like kind of sounds like a horror film soundtrack, you know, like where it's just kind of like weird, like sinister sounding vibes. I really like that kind of shit. So in one sense, I did like this a lot. It's just like I just didn't get what they were saying.
I felt like the beat itself was like a low energy vibe they were giving off, but this had lyrics.
Maybe they're cooking up NyQuil in that crock pot.
A lot of the mumble rap genre seems to have evolved, I guess, somewhat of like hyphy, possibly. These guys are from Atlanta. Early on, when we were growing up, one of the guys who kind of, I would say, laid some of the groundwork, and some of his guys are still around today, was Juvenile. You remember he would play a lot with his words. Slang is always evolving. There's always new slang, and they're always throwing stuff that isn't really that said, or it might be just completely regional, and yet they throw it in a song, and some of it catches on. Some of it might just be relegated to that song. But I remember Juvenile came out with one's whole song was you come out Sue, huh? Like the whole thing was huh, and he just ended every line with huh. And I remember thinking, you know, well, kind of unusual for a rap song. But when we go back to the book of Kool Keith, I mean, he was a guy that would write rhymes that didn't always rhyme. It was more about just the words and the rhythm. And as far as what my understanding of what mumble rap has kind of come to be, it's a low energy style that has less lyrics, that they tend to repeat themselves a lot more. The beats are very kind of low energy. It's meant to be like songs that are supposed to sound sexy for the strip club, I feel. But they have a line in here, I think Lil Uzi Vert, one of the line is going to the strip club and making it rain. You know, that's kind of a general accepted slang phrase. These guys being bad and bougie, the video, what I really admired about it was the high-end production value in what clearly are like 3 setups. Overpass under like area that they're rapping at. They're in this diner where they're, you know, pouring, I assume that's either Cristal or some high-end champagne, but they're in like some all-night chicken and waffle house or some shit. And then the next one is just them on the street with all their bikes and their ATVs just riding around. Those are the only 3 sets in the video. And then there's I think a dude's at like a housing project, that where one of the main Migos guys is rapping from. So it was like it was combining high end and low end, Bad and Boujee. They really kind of send up the ghetto fabulous kind of aspect of this, and that's been a theme in a lot of rap since the late 90s. Jay-Z kind of popularizing a lot of that. I agree that the song is too long. When I saw that it was over 5 minutes, and I look back and I'm like, this is coming from Nate, Mr. Anything over 90 minutes in a movie. If you're this monotonous, anything over 3 minutes in a song. So it was kind of a surprise. And then also Nate had some more tidbits of facts regarding all this. So we were learning so much more about Nathan than we were really about mumble rap. As a song, I thought it was actually cooler than I anticipated. I thought I was going to hate the whole thing, and I didn't at all. Kendrick Lamar, his style kind of lends itself a little bit into it. Mumble rap, I always felt was like something that kind of also came from the SoundCloud rap kind of scene because, it's very low budget, the minimalism kind of involved in it. But these guys definitely rapped. I wouldn't even call this necessarily so much mumble rap as much as this is just modern rap with some of the mumble rap kind of characteristics.
Well, I feel like initially it was kind of a pejorative that got slapped onto Southern rappers like these guys. And I think dudes just took it and ran, took the mumble and ran as the years went on. Literally made it into mumbling.
Yeah, you co-opt it, kind of take the piss out of somebody trying to take the piss out of you. But these guys rap, mainly Migos. I give Migos credit because they had good lyrics for the style that, it wasn't my speed, but it's not for me. I'm not, of that world necessarily, but but as a musician and as somebody who likes hip hop for the most part, I was like, I can totally see liking this in the right setting and mind frame. I was not particularly that impressed with my least favorite part, which is Lil Uzi Vert. I thought initially that Lil Uzi was the main guy rapping and doing the chorus hooks and all that. No, if you make it to the end of the video, the last verse is Lil Uzi Vert. He's the youngest. He's clearly the guy that I say embodies a lot of more recent kind of rap vibes that you've been seeing from like some of these rappers from our songs past. Like, was it XXX Tentacion and was it Tekashi 6ix9ine? Guys with the tattoos on their faces and the colorful hairs and all that kind of stuff. And he kind of embodies that. He was wearing a Marilyn Manson shirt. I actually dig that kind of crossover interest of like them trying to blend a lot of stuff. And not hating, but he was my least favorite part, probably because that's more of like a thing with the youth now. And I'm an old man, I like my hip hop, catchy beats and catchy rhymes. I don't care for too much slang. I like to understand a little what they might be talking about. But the slang they were using, I do have to admire the style of them not just making up words. It's onomatopoeia. Their heavy use of onomatopoeia, where that's what the skr and the cricket, whatever, doing all the sounds that sound like that's what I understand. That's it, Art Lord, onomatopoeia. Is that accurate? Yeah. Yeah. So, it's very creative. It's more creative than I thought it would be. So I have to give credit to Nate for expanding our horizons in hip hop with this choice.
Did they name this group after the island that Balky from Perfect Strangers is from?
He was from Mypos.
Oh, okay.
Ha ha ha.
That was one of Nathan's solid impersonations when we were in high school. Was the Balky Bartakamis.
Thank you for the knowledge, though, Nate.
That was me doing an impersonation of Victor doing an impersonation of Balky Bartakamos.
It was still solid, though.
Shout out to Vic. Definitely the Island Boys were a stem from this kind of thing. Their style. Another thing that was kind of a turnoff of this genre was they use a large amount of auto-tune. I've only enjoyed auto-tune when it's used satirically, like by the Lonely Island guys kind of making fun of this type of stuff. But they are fans.
Yeah, this song had like one little tiny bit of auto-tune right in the beginning, and then it was gone.
There was more. No, there was more.
Was there? Okay. I thought it was just at the beginning.
But I'll give him credit. It was not used for singing. It was used to a lesser extent. Like you didn't. It was
used to mumble some shit. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't notice it. I did, but it's just because I have an aversion to a lot of the auto-tune, just sound in general.
Rolling Stone magazine has a list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. and they actually put this song as number 451 in their list of greatest songs of all time. Not greatest songs for that year, not of the decade, but of all time. I find that shit fascinating. That's
If we're going on YouTube views, I was very shocked to see 1.2 billion views of this song on YouTube, that's a lot of fucking views. Not many make it to the billion mark, so it was a very popular song. And I had not heard about, I think I've heard, the term bougie I've heard.
Fancy pants. Yeah.
It's the slang term for bourgeois or bourgeoisie or whatever. Are you laughing at that, Jay? You like that?
I'm laughing at fancy pants.
Oh, yeah. Fancy pants.
It's the technical explanation of that term.
That'd be a great rapper name.
Lil Fancy Pants.
Little fancy pants.
Lil Britches.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Friggin'.
Yeah. Again, we're trying to learn new things. We have open minds, as closed-minded as we can be.
I didn't approach this from the "I'm an old man, I hate this" angle at all. It was
you didn't.
I'm fascinated with this shit. Yeah.
See, always a surprise, and then some things we definitely keep the mind ironclad shut, such as our art lord when it comes to sports. So that's
Can't even hear the word. It doesn't even.
It's an impenetrable fortress.
Washes over.
You can't even make a Lord of the Rings meme around that shit. It's just it's going to be tough. I'll find a way though. God damn it. All right. So that is our show. I want to thank everybody for their patience and candor in regards to the subjects this week. I know sports and the Olympics are not easy topics for some people to talk about, but I want to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you for enjoying these episodes. Hope you enjoyed this one. Nathan Nation's been back. I want to thank him for giving us a pass to invite Andy to fill in so we can keep just to our schedule. But as you know, we like the original four being here. As much as sometimes some of us may not want to be here during certain topics. So, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to point any fingers. Thank you, Jason the Art Lord, Nathan Nation, Spoolie D. I'm Mean Dave. Have a great fucking week. And we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.